Hi, welcome to the Libertarian Alternative. My name is Mark Selzer. I'm the Southern Vice Chair of the California Libertarian Party and my co-host.
I'm Dusty Taylor. I'm the Libertarian spokesperson and activist for the show today. It's great to be back on the show. How are you, Mark?
I'm doing great. Thanks for coming out.
And we have another show with Ed Clark, who is one of our heroes here at the Libertarian Party. Ran for governor in 1978 for the good state of California, and also for nationally the presidency in 1980. And we talked to you a little bit about what your campaign strategies and platforms were. We'd love to continue that conversation. Welcome to the show again, Ed.
Good, thank you. Nice to be here again.
So,
glad to talk about that.
You bet.
We were talking a little bit about there's two issues that you weren't almost allowed to talk about then in mixed company.
That's
in
right,
1980.
24 years. That's 24 years ago.
Which were Social Security, which we've already covered, and the war on drugs. When we used to say that the war on drugs is futile and it's not going to work and it isn't working and it's wrong,
we would get this. Oh my stars! What are you talking about?
Well, times have changed because there are a fair number of people who now support it. Milton Friedman, the Nobel laureate, has come out for that. A mayor of Baltimore named Smoltke has come out for that. The judge named Gray, I think down in Orange County, has come out for that. There are several county sheriffs around the country, including some in California, who have come out for that. So I think people are beginning to see that there are many, many downsides in trying to prohibit drugs.
That's right. Now, maybe we can explain a little bit about what we mean about the war on drugs is futile. People that are just tuning in right now to find out what the Libertarian Party is all about are hearing that and perhaps doing the same thing. Oh my, what are they talking about? End the war on drugs. Why don't you explain a little bit about what our position is on that, Ed?
It used to be in the United States in the 19th century that I believe all drugs were legal. And all the hard drugs you hear about were legal.
Morphine, everything.
And morphine and cocaine and opium, those kind of things were legal. And there were a few people who were addicted, but it never caused any crime.
Right.
Because it was inexpensive. People who drink too much wine and live in the streets, they don't cause any crime.
Right.
They may harm themselves, but they're not hurting anybody else. But starting in 1913, during the Woodrow Wilson administration, federal legislation prohibited gradually almost all drugs except alcohol. And as a result of that, prices for illegal drugs get higher and higher. People began to steal and rob to support their habits, and massive amount of crimes were then and now are being taking place because people are stealing to feed their habits.
And in order to fight that crime, we have inflated police departments. We have a whole new agency called the Department of, what is it?
Drug
the DEA?
Enforcement Agency.
That's it.
DEA,
That's it.
Drug
That's
Enforcement.
And you know, we're pouring as taxpayers billions of dollars into this war on crime, war on drugs.
Yeah, I think maybe looking at the cost would be a good way to start out.
Exactly.
We have pretty much destroyed the country of Colombia, where the drug people control half the country and all those exports go to the United States. We did a fair job of destroying Peru in the same way. Poor people were raising drugs because they can make a little more money, because the price was so high in the United States and was so high because of the prohibition against drugs in the United States.
And we're
so if you want to count the costs, you have to count thousands of people who've been killed in Peru and Colombia.
Yes.
And we're destroying our kids here, because what happens with the drug war is that you make it profitable to hook kids on drugs. And that's where they start. They start with young people because they're the most vulnerable and they're the experimenters.
Now, when we talk about the libertarian situation now, we've now addressed what the problem is. We're talking about saving taxpayers' money in the war on drugs. What's the alternative? If I were tuning into this as an audience member, I would look at you, Ed, and say, gee, what would be the alternative to our war on drugs? We do have people that are addicted to drugs. We do have people that are out of control in their lives. What do we do for them?
Well, you can either treat drugs like a criminal issue, or you can treat it like a medical issue.
Yep.
And if you want to treat it like a medical issue, then people who cannot control their drug use, you're trying to stop them from using it by means of incentives and persuasion, and not prisons.
Right.
And then there are some people who can and always have used drugs moderately, and then they're no longer going to be criminals. They're just going to be somebody, like someone who has a couple martinis Saturday night, and instead of that, Saturday nights when they're out with their friends, they do something that is now illegal. And so many people who use drugs now will continue to use drugs in a moderate way that is controlled, And those who have trouble controlling it will now have much better access to the medical system and the whole care volunteer system to help people to control uncontrollable drug habits.
Which is really what the Libertarian Party is all about. It is taking responsibility for ourselves. It's having our own individual rights be our freedoms. Our libertarian freedoms is our responsibility for ourselves. So if we are able to handle drugs on a small time basis or on a drink by drink basis, we should be allowed to do that.
And the other side of this in the United States is the huge amount of crimes that are committed by drug users to support their habit.
Exactly.
And people think that 50–60% of robberies and burglaries are committed by people who are supporting their habit. Now, nobody is going to burglarize your house and threaten you in order to get enough money to buy some wine if they drink too much wine, or a martini.
Hold you up for a martini.
Right. Nobody's going to do that. And they may drink too much, and hopefully there are ways to take care of them, and certainly there are other ways that could be devised to take care of them, but they're not a threat to peaceful people.
Excellent.
And the war against drug has produced hundreds and thousands of millions of property crimes against innocent people.
And violent crimes.
And violent crimes. Exactly. Personal
that some lady
crimes.
goes walking home Friday night, she's cashed her paycheck, and there's some mug waiting at the corner to hit her over the head and grab her pocketbook and run off with it.
Exactly.
And that lady is an absolute innocent person, and she is the primary victim, in my view, of the war against drugs.
Yes. I agree.
Yeah, and also if you use drugs, I think they are terrible. And I'm very much against drugs. I've never even had so much as a half a beer my entire life. I'm certainly not a conservative, but I don't drink or use drugs because I saw how it devastated both my parents. And I always tell people, and I've helped to get people off of drugs, I've helped to get my friends off of drugs, and I always advocate that we should stop, and it's a very damaging thing, but I do not think that arresting people for it is going to work. I know that it makes it worse, because what we're doing, especially with these long sentences, for a kid who makes a mistake with drugs, 5, 10, 15 years. I mean, one night in jail can ruin your life. You know, a lot of these kids are going to jail for 5, 10, 15 years or 18 years old. They'll get AIDS while they're in jail. And
they still have access to drugs.
And they still have access to drugs,
yeah.
And some of them will die even before they finish
One of
sentences.
the clear illustrations of how impossible it is to stop drug use is the fact that drug use in prisons is an everyday reality.
Exactly.
And if you can't stop it in a controlled environment like that, how can you stop it in a country of 290 million people that's 3,000 miles across? It cannot be done. It's not a goal that can be attained, and trying to attain that goal, I think, has much more social harm to ourselves, to people in Latin America, than saying it's a medical problem, we're going to treat it like a medical problem, and that will reduce the scope of the problem.
And
That's
our Bill of
excellent.
Rights. It's doing a lot of damage to our Bill of Rights and our personal freedom, because we've given law enforcement kind of a lot of leeway on the Bill of Rights to try to win the war. We keep making another exception and another exception and another exception on searches, privacy, looking into your bank account to see if you're laundering money for drugs, et cetera, and it hasn't worked. And it's got to be up to private individuals to go out and try to educate, go into the schools, go to rock concerts, and talk about the harms of drug use and drug addiction. Talk to people on their own level, in a way that they can relate to. Most of the drug commercials that we've had to pay for, we see them now all the time. Every time they do